So Mark Avera is Vice President at Porter Novelli and has built a reputation of turning big ideas into actionable programs that get results. He spent the last 15 years engaging audiences using social and digital media on behalf of global brands and organizations. And yes, he's here today to share some of his social media wisdom with us. So Mark, welcome.
It is wonderful to be here, and I am absolutely thrilled to talk to everyone today, to join you on the stage and share a little bit about what I have learned over the years on leveraging social media. Gemma, your talk was so inspirational about crafting and telling your story and having confidence that your story is impactful and having confidence to tell that story. And so now I want to talk a little bit more about the kind of strategy and tactics for building that sphere of influence that you talked about, creating a buzz. Basically, how do you operationalize doing that on social media?
I'm here with my pen and paper. I'm ready.
Well, you better take notes because I'm going to give you a lot of information today, and hopefully there's something in here for everyone, no matter where you are or how familiar you are with social media. I think this will be a good blueprint to either helping you improve your influence on social media or give you confidence in how to get started. So where we are going to start this talk is with this old cartoon. This old cartoon is from the early days of social media marketing, and it basically makes fun of people like me, marketers who are just so enthusiastic about getting on social media that they're just ready to show up everywhere without knowing what they're going to do there or who they're going to reach there. And what I'm here to say is that we, all of us at this conference today, we want to do it a bit differently. So here's what I want to take you through in this presentation. First, I'm going to show you where to start. Where do you start in your thinking about showing up on social media and leveraging it for your cause? Second, I always get the question, what's the best social media network to use? Or I heard Instagram's hot, or tell me about TikTok. We're going to talk about that. We're going to compare and contrast some of the pros and cons of some different platforms, both ones you're probably familiar with and maybe some new ones that you've heard about. And then three, I'll walk you through a few tips about doing it well, show you a few examples that hopefully will be helpful in sparking your inspiration and showing you how you might do it in your own life with your own story. So where do I start? The problem that I see when I talk to individuals about their personal use of social media to support a cause, to build their own brand, to build their own influence, is usually one of two very different types of things. But this talk will address both of them. The first is there might be some hesitancy, some intimidation, some trepidation because they don't know where to start. It's big, it's daunting, and they basically don't dive in because they don't feel confident that they know what to do or where to start. On the other hand, I run into people that are very enthusiastic. And what they do is they throw themselves at all the different social media platforms. They try to do everything at once. They jump on the next hot social media platform just because it's hot. They try to throw a bunch of content out there, and then they burn out. They get frustrated with the amount of content they're creating. They're maybe not necessarily seeing the results they want to see. And so then they quickly get discouraged because they're trying to do everything at once. If there is only one thing that you take away from my talk today, it should be this. I want you to narrow your focus. This will both help you get started, or it'll help you be successful if you're already ready to get started. Narrow your focus. Narrow your focus to target only one social media platform. Focus on a niche topic, a niche way that you're going to tell your story, and understand who you're trying to reach. Don't try to reach every single person. Try to pick a group of people that you're trying to reach. Pick one platform, one niche topic to talk about, one group of people you're trying to reach. That is the most important takeaway of my talk. Now, how do you do that? That starts by looking at the intersection of three core pillars, right? Effective personal social media, whether you're scaling your presence or you're trying to advocate for a cause, is at the center of, aligning with your personal story, your personal passions, your personal comfort level, the audience you're trying to reach, where they show up, the content they respond to. and the platform that you're on, the capabilities or the algorithms or the unique cultural context of that platform. At the intersection of those three is your route to success advocating on social media. So let's dive a little bit deeper into each of these. On the personal side, I want you to think about a few questions that you need to answer or decision points that you need to make to define what this means for you. The first is, what are your goals? What are your personal goals for this? And I'll tell you a story. Early on in my career, I heard about this rule called the 1-9-90 rule. The 1-9-90 rule. Now, the 1-9-90 rule simply states that as a rule of internet culture, no matter what network you're on, Instagram, Twitter, doesn't matter, that 1% of people create most of the original content, right? They're the content creators that are publishing unique content. 9% either amplify it, edit it, otherwise build off it. These are the amplifiers. They share it. They take that 1% content, they show it to others. 90% of the users or 90% of the network are just consumers. They might like it or engage or occasionally share a comment or something, but 90% of us really just view the content and maybe engage with it. And, as we're talking about Parkinson's and we're talking about, what your goals may be, we don't need everyone to be the 1%, right? You might not be the 1%, and that's okay. The 9% play a really important role in surfacing ideas and content worth hearing to the community. And the 90%, they can leverage the power of social media to find new ideas, to make new connections and forge new relationships with people that will make meaningful differences in their lives and maybe inspire them with ideas that they can take outside of social media into the physical world, the real world, where they're engaging with organizations or doing other activities or interacting with family and loved ones. And that matters too. So we don't need everyone to be the 1%. And some other decision points or questions to answer are, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to be known for? And this is super important. As I said, narrow your focus into a niche topic. I'll give you an example of here from outside the health arena that might be helpful. It's Final Four season, right? We actually do have a Final Four this year. And, if you created a social media content to talk about sports, you would be really broad, right? Really broad. You're competing with ESPN, right? Sports. You could narrow your focus and you could say, I'm just going to talk about basketball. That's a little bit narrower. That's good. You could narrow your focus further and say, I'm just going to talk about college basketball. Now we're getting a lot better. Or you could narrow your focus even further. If you're like me, a UNC basketball fan, you could say, I'm just going to talk about UNC basketball. Now you have a really niche topic. You're focused, you're narrowly honed in, and the audience who's interested in that is highly engaged, and it will be easier to build your sphere of influence and your following with that audience. And as you build that audience, it will be easier to build it among that niche community and then expand much easier and much more successful than trying to start broad from the get-go. So answer some of these questions about your personal goals, your personal comfort level, the topics that you want to be known for. With your audience, it's important to also define, who do you even want to talk to? Who needs to hear your story? Where do they spend time on social media? Are there communities that already exist that they're a part of that you should join? And discovering and answering these questions are important so that you really understand who you're creating your content for, who you're looking to engage. Let me just, give you an example. If you want to connect with caregivers who share a similar experience, they're going to show up in different places, want different types of things, and engage with different types of content than maybe if you're trying to reach an audience of journalists or policymakers or academics, right? Though they will be on different platforms, in the first, you might look for a Facebook group or a Reddit forum where those caregivers in that group of people that share experience already exist. If you're trying to reach a policymaker, they're much more likely to see a response to their tweet than to see a post that you make on Facebook. And so just an example of how the audience will also help dictate, how you're creating content, where you're choosing to show up. If then we look at the platforms, because the important thing here, the final layer in getting started comes right about the time you've identified some of that overlap between your personal and your audience. And that's an understanding of how the platforms differ from each other. They use algorithms in different types of ways. They focus on different types of content. Some are really more about text, others are video, others are image-based. And so how you create content, and if you're able to create content, is going to look different on those different platforms. And some also just connect with people differently. Facebook really prioritizes connecting friends and family, or scaling a page presence or a group, whereas a platform like TikTok prioritizes showing new content to people that you're not connected with. And TikTok puts almost no emphasis on whether you are connected to that individual or not. And so they operate very differently. So they have different contexts, and some even offer some functionalities which might be helpful to you. And depending on what your personal goals are, maybe that's not important. So Facebook and Instagram, for example, they offer direct donations to certified 503c corporate nonprofits. Twitter does not, for example. Twitter does not have that capability, and that may or may not be important to you depending on what your goals are. So at the center of these three things, answering these questions, making some of the decision points about these things will give you the direction that you need to get started, and the confidence to either take that first step if you're hesitant, or narrow your focus if you're one of those enthusiastic people who's ready to just throw yourself at everything. Let me give you an example, a practical example from a gentleman that I follow on Twitter and that I've been inspired by during the COVID-19 lockdown. Okay, this is Matthew Kobach, and he is the former social media manager of the New York Stock Exchange. He did a personal experiment. He loved Twitter, and he knew that marketing people were on Twitter. And so he had defined his one platform as Twitter. He had one platform, just like I mentioned. And he basically ran an experiment in the past year and a half to see how he could grow his own personal sphere of influence and his own personal audience on Twitter. And he has been sharing some of his learnings from that experiment in the past few months. And, I think that number one thing is, again, goes back to what I said a big takeaway was, he picked his niche topic. He only posted about social media marketing and social media content and social media creativity. That's where he focused. He didn't post about anything else. And then two, he was consistent. He did it and he stuck with it, and he did it over time. So when we think about, the three circles that I just mentioned, he picked his personal topic and he was niche. He knew his audience was marketing people, and he knew where they were, and he picked his one platform, Twitter, and he poured his efforts into that, and he grew his following from just a few thousand at the start of lockdown or just before lockdown to more than 100,000 today. So I know that I said that there was the three circles, the three pillars that we need to talk about, the personal, the audience, and the platforms. But I get most of the questions about platforms. People are always asking me to compare the platforms and what's hot here and what's hot there, what works here. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at some of the various social media platforms that exist today, and maybe some pros and cons and some differentiators in between them. And maybe some starting points for helping you determine what that one platform may be for you. The first three we'll start with are what I call the big three. These are probably the three platforms that come to mind first when somebody says that they want to get active on social media, or when we're talking about social media influencers or influence. And so, here's how I've arranged this. If you're the type of person who might not be comfortable trying a new platform or learning a new platform, but you're already on Facebook and you're comfortable with the Facebook interface, that might be a good place to start for you. Facebook has the broadest reach among Americans. So tons of people use it, and it has a lot of functionality, right? You can post all different types of content, from links to videos. You can live stream on it. It has fundraising mechanisms built in. So it has a lot going for it, and that it has a very large audience there, and it has a lot of capabilities. Instagram, on the other hand, has a lot of Facebook's benefits in terms of scale and infrastructure, in terms of, like the fundraising built in, and being able to create, special profiles with tools for creators or influencers. But it really narrowly focuses on visual communication. So Instagram is a great choice if you're somebody who maybe already loves photography, already has a strong design aesthetic. Instagram would be a great choice. And it skews a little bit younger than Facebook, a little bit more popular among millennials, a little less popular among, older Americans, but it is image-based. So if you feel confident with imagery, photography, design, it might be a great choice for you. Twitter is very different from both of them. Twitter is if you're somebody who's interested in breaking news, if you're interested in somebody who, or if you're somebody who's interested in making new connections with new communities or new people that you're not connected to yet, that's like a fundamental part of the Twitter culture, is finding new people to connect with, and also tracking the latest news and developments in policy and academia. And it's really more text-based. It's a lot text-based. You do see some images, but it's mostly text and link sharing. So if you're not somebody who's comfortable with photography or design, but you do love staying up to date on the latest things, then Twitter might be a good choice for you, especially if you're interested in reaching more of that professional audience, maybe a journalist or following academic or policy-making discussions. And next, we'll look at upcoming platforms or ones that might operate a little bit differently. So the first and the biggest story in social media over the past year has been TikTok. And it's just been adding, tens of millions of users left and right and left and right. And it is an excellent platform. If you're somebody who would love to learn video editing, or you're already into video editing, the simple video editing tools on TikTok's back end, and especially if you would love to reach a little bit of a younger audience, TikTok is an excellent place to start. It has a lot less capabilities than the others in that you're really posting videos and you have to be comfortable with posting videos. But right now, TikTok is at the very tip of the spear when it comes to internet culture today. A lot of the content that is now being reshared on Facebook and Instagram is today originating on TikTok. Reddit is, again, organized completely differently. Reddit is much more like a forum. It's organized in different subreddit forums, which are around particular topics of interest for people who may not know each other to connect with each other and to share information and to make new connections around shared experiences or shared passions. It tends to also be a bit younger, a little bit more fluent and higher educated in terms of the use, but it has really interesting conversations on it. There are forums for Parkinson's caregivers. There are forums for people living with Parkinson's. And there's forums on all kinds of different health topics. There's a lot of different ways that those conversations are organized. So if you're somebody who's more interested in connecting to people and sharing information, that might be a great choice for you. Clubhouse has also been a big story, especially at the beginning of this year, and it's really different, right? So if you're somebody who would really prefer to talk or listen, as opposed to writing or sharing a photo or a video, Clubhouse may be an interesting choice for you. It's very small, but it's growing rapidly. And it's kind of an audio chat room. It's a mix between a podcast and a chat room where a host will start a room and they'll basically have a conversation with another host, and people can join the chat room, listen in, and raise their hand and participate in the conversation as well. So it's an interesting up and coming platform to consider. And then finally is YouTube. YouTube has been around forever, and it's used by just as many Americans as Facebook. So it's certainly not up and coming. It's already arrived. However, I put on this slide because it has a higher barrier to entry. Really, YouTube has the best YouTube channels are creating really good videos. So if video editing is something that you're passionate about, or that you would like to learn and you would feel confident in throwing yourself at that, YouTube has a ton of benefits, starting with the fact that videos rank in Google searches. So if you can answer questions that people may be asking to Google, YouTube has a great way of showing people content that the other platforms don't have. But it really would require somebody who would be interested in creating their own videos. Great platform, and maybe a good place for somebody who's interested in videos. So let's talk about some tips for doing it well. We're going to go pretty quick here, and my 5 guiding principles are this. One is connect with others. We've talked about picking your platform. We've talked about the content that you could create on the platforms we just mentioned. But a fundamental part of social media is being social. Being social. So it's important to also connect with others. See what other people are talking about in your niche topic. Join those conversations and add value. Not only will you get smarter about the content that people are engaging with, but you'll make connections with people who will be more likely to follow you and amplify your content. Second is on written platforms like a Reddit or a Twitter, the headline still rules. So what you write in that tweet is going to be the difference between whether somebody stops and and engages with your content or whether they keep scrolling. Conversely, with a platform like an Instagram, which is image-based, or TikTok, which is all video, that image or that first few seconds of your video are really going to be what inspires people to stop scrolling through the feed so rapidly, just like we all do, right? We all do that on our phone. We're here and we're just scrolling, and then you stop on something that catches your eye. So on those visual platforms, that imagery becomes super important. Fourth is to be consistent. Nobody's going to, I would say be consistent, and also don't try to do the perfect post. You're not going to create the one perfect post that goes viral and then you've told your story, right? It's being consistent and consistently active on the platform. I would say add value regularly. It's better to be consistent over time than to try to write the perfect post once. And then finally is mobile first. Assume that the person who is reading your content or the people reading your content are doing it on a mobile phone. Even if you create the content on a computer, even if you post the content on a computer, assume that the people consuming that content are going to be on a phone. And here are just some tools to help. I mentioned, if you like photography or if you have a good design aesthetic for Instagram, but there are tools that are either have free versions or maybe really low cost monthly subscriptions that can really up level, the kind of images and graphics that you make for social media and make it pretty easy. They're easy to learn. They have templates you can use. They can add color. And so I'm not advocating one of these over the other. It's more important that you know that there are tools to help you do this, right? So whether it's Canva or Adobe Spark or Pictochart, which helps you make little infograms and little charts really easily and in a compelling way, there's a lot of tools out there that you can use to help. And then finally, we'll take a look at 4 or 5 examples from Twitter and Instagram, because Twitter's text-based, and you can extrapolate some of the best practices from there for more text-based platforms. And Instagram is so visually based, it has some good examples for kind of any visual platform. Here are some people that I noted, individuals or nonprofit organizations that I noted that had some interesting posts that I want to call out. So the first is Jen Heemstra. She's a professor at Emory down here in Atlanta with me. Not with me, I don't work with her, but I'm in Atlanta. But one thing that impressed me about Jen is her narrow focus. She talks about mental health. She talks about mental health, especially for college grad students. And that's where she stays. That's her niche, and she stays there. And she is consistent on Twitter talking about that. And she's built a huge following and tons of engagement by doing that niche. And even if she's posting around special moments in time, like Valentine's Day, she maps that back to her niche that she's defined and the audience she's talking to. Here is Rachel Bender. She's a grad student, and I just love this post from her. She took advantage of a virtual event opportunity and still was able to add a visual element to her post, even though it was virtual and she couldn't be in person and she couldn't show her participation at an event. She found a way to be creative and add her authentic, a person to the post here with a live pictures. And I also love the way that she formats her tweets, gives lots of space in between them so they're easy to read. Adds hashtags at the very end so that the text of her post is easy to read, but she's still tying into those trending conversations on Twitter. Here is Dr. Lonser. He is really focused on the scientific and academic side. And I love how he pulls in some unique visuals and images. And this is a particular video showing brain activity. And he's also super consistent in his content, right? He stays focused on academic breaking news or academic research. And people know that's what he's going to talk about. He really only talks about that. And he's built some strong engagement by focusing on that. 50 Fir Park. I love this story. Here's a gentleman who basically created an Instagram account to document his journey raising awareness and funding for Parkinson's. And he is documenting his training as he gets ready for a marathon. And one thing I love is, he picked a niche and what he's going to scale his account on doing. And he's also, like I said, he's been connected with others in the community. He's connecting with others. He's joining other conversations, and he actually took over the Parkinsons.org Instagram account in a collaboration on Instagram. It's a great example of, not just posting content, but then, looking at who else is in the space and connecting with others on that platform. here's a shot at life. I love how they basically took an event that they were doing and made sure that they could create some good social media content out of it. They were on Capitol Hill talking about the importance of vaccinations for global health. Again, they have a consistent niche focus. They're talking about vaccinations and them as the, one of the greatest public health achievements of our time. And they stick to that. That's their niche. And they come at that niche from all different types of angles, but they've scaled their following with that good focus. And then finally, from the Parkinson's.org Instagram account, again, I just love how they took advantage of the different platform capabilities here in this feature from last summer on summer activities. And, they really took advantage, like I was talking about the platform capabilities of how Instagram lets you build stories. And they built a content series that really leaned into the special capabilities of the platform in here, adding a lot of animated elements, having the story build on itself, in kind of a listable format that people can click through. And it's just a great example of considering what the platform allows them to do and then taking advantage of that platform that they focused on. And so with that, I just want to leave you with two thoughts. Desmond Tutu once said, the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And so for the people in the audience right now who may be in that first group that I mentioned, that first challenge that I mentioned, that you want to get active on social media, but you're maybe not confident, you don't know where to start, the only way to start is by putting your foot on the ground and starting, right? One bite at a time, one post at a time. Take what we talked about today, one platform, one niche topic, who are you going to reach, and just start. For everyone, set a time to look back, for both the people who may have been hesitant to start or the people who have been trying to do everything. I would say start now, narrow your focus, and then don't assume that everything is going to come into play or everything is going to change overnight. Set a goal. 3, 6, 9 months from now is even better. And be consistent, focus on your niche, your platform, your audience, and then post, whether it's every day or a couple times a week, and then just do that. See what's engaging, post more of it, but then wait to look back and evaluate yourself. Wait 6 months, 9 months, look back, and you will be surprised at what you've learned, who you've connected with, and the difference that you've made in growing your sphere of influence for the cause that you care about.
Mark, what a wealth of information. I'm glad these sessions are recorded and we can watch them back. That's all I'm saying. Right, we've got just a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to give you one of these questions that's come in, which I think is quite important, really. How can I be present on social media whilst trying to manage the negativity that can transpire?
Yeah, that's really, that's a challenge and a reality of social media today. And, there's no necessarily easy way to do it. You have a couple mechanisms that are at your fingertips that I would absolutely encourage everyone to use. So if there are trolls or people who are, negatively impacting your content, hide their comments, block them. That is now become a standard behavior. If somebody is adding no or zero value to your content, block them and don't worry about it. If you're on Twitter, where it's especially notorious, just block them. If you're on Facebook, you can block them from your page, or you can hide their comments on your page so they won't even know that they're blocked, but nobody else can see their comments. And so I would just encourage people to do that. And second, an advice I always give to folks that I'm counseling or advising is, there will always be those people, not just on social media, but in your life, right? Who never, your answer is never going to be good enough, or they disagree with you for whatever reason. And, you just have to realize that you don't let those people bring you down to their level. Move on, look past them. If they're not with you, don't let them be a roadblock to you, move on.
Yes. And I think there's a study saying, or I don't know if there's a study, but they say that often you might have 10 positive comments saying, oh, brilliant, loved it, fantastic, one negative comment. But it's always the one negative comment that you take away, isn't it? And remember, and you almost forget all of the positive ones and seem to focus on the negative. So that's another tip. Just try and focus on all the positive comments that you get.
Totally. And your community also recognizes, I mean, we recognize this, right? When we're seeing a friend's post or we're seeing a post of somebody that we respect and we see somebody making an outrageous negative comment on their post, I think less of that person.
Yes.
Not of the person I follow. So, a lot of people online, there's some negativity, but, a lot of people recognize a jerk when they see one. So, I wouldn't let it worry you too much.
Yes. And final question before we go to the break. Can you truly have a successful reach on social media without a social media budget?
For individuals, I would say yes, but there will always be a budget. The question is, are you spending money or time or both? And it's impossible to have a successful social media program without budgeting one or both of those things. You're going to have to put time in it. It takes time. There's still some people who think that it's just as easy as, I'll just take 5 minutes and throw up a post today. And, certainly the functionality of the platforms allows you to do that. But if you want to be successful and you want to scale your influence, you need to think differently than that. And it definitely will take an investment of time. Or if you're an organization or somebody that has, resources to get some help or do some advertising, you can also put some money behind it. But one way or the other, you're going to pay to be successful.
That is such a good point. Yeah, a time investment. I can very well imagine how social media can be a time investment. Mark, thank you so much for all of that information. That was brilliant. Thank you for those insights and for joining us today.
Glad to be here.